Hello everyone, and welcome to the November 2025 Bereft Souls DevLog. As you may know, we did not post a devlog for October. The majority of our work in October was towards hosting the Questbook competition, and that wouldn't have made for a very interesting video. So, we've decided to combine October and November into one singular devlog. I have some exciting news to share with you all, including the results of the Questbook competition at the end of this video, so let's waste no more time and get right into it. For starters, let's cover what we've done outside of the Questbook competition. One of the features I'm super excited about is the Fargo's and Secrets of the Shadows Pyramid Merger, which we worked on in collaboration with the Infernal Eclipse of Ragnarok team. If you haven't already, be sure to check out their socials linked in the description. Let's start with the problem. The Fargo's and Secrets of the Shadows pyramids can be incompatible in certain cases. Particularly, Fargo's adds an additional room to the vanilla pyramid for the Cursed Coffin boss fight, whereas Secrets of the Shadows entirely replaces the vanilla pyramid with its own implementation. In some cases, both the vanilla and Secrets of the Shadows pyramids could spawn, and this would resolve the issue. But in others, the vanilla pyramid would fail to spawn, rendering some Fargo's content unplayable and potentially resulting in related crashes. So here's what we're doing. We've worked closely with the Fargo's team to change how Fargo's handles its guaranteed pyramid generation. Now, if you play the game with both Fargo's and Secrets of the Shadows enabled, you should see that both pyramids will always spawn, meaning all content is playable and no more crashes. Great. But that's not all. The Infernal Eclipse of Ragnarok team is working on some smaller compatibility or DLC mods for certain content mod pairings, one of which is Fargo's and Secrets of the Shadows. We have worked closely together with the Infernal Eclipse of Ragnarok team to develop a much better solution for this DLC mod, which is a complete merger of these pyramids as opposed to just a guaranteed generation of both. Here's how it works. When utilizing the Fargo's and Secrets of the Shadows DLC, the Fargo's pyramid room has been changed to directly integrate into the Secrets of the Shadows pyramid. Typically, the Secrets of the Shadows pyramid content is locked behind a key that is obtained after defeating the Eater of Worlds or Brain of Cthulhu. Now, the Cursed Coffin boss fight room has been added as an additional gate to the Secrets of the Shadows pyramid content and merged with the existing gate room. You can see how this looks on the screen now. Players will need to defeat the Cursed Coffin to release a curse that was obscuring the lock on the pyramid gate. The souls originally released from the coffin will now home in on the gate's lock before the curse is broken and the key is able to be inserted as normal. The Cursed Coffin is intended to be fought before the evil bosses anyways, so no change to progression has been made, only the integration of content from multiple mods into a more cohesive experience. We look forward to working closely together with the Infernal Eclipse of Ragnarok team in the future, and as before, if you haven't already, check out their socials linked in the description. Next up, we've got some progress on upcoming features to TPack Builder. Our future goal with this mod is to add an in-game UI that enables the complete utilization of TPack Builder's features. You can see a very rough draft of this UI now. Our end goal with this project is to make modpack creation and management usable by everyone with basically zero modding experience required. In TPack Builder 2.0, you will be able to create new mod projects and manage your mod's properties directly from the in-game UI. On top of this, we will have a built-in file browser that is scoped to only display TPack Builder files, allowing you to create, modify, and delete TPack Builder modifications like recipe changes or stat adjustments, all from within this UI. You will no longer have to manually and tediously type out all of your JSON files, and TPack Builder will generate them for you. You'll be able to save and build your mod directly from this UI as well, meaning the only thing you'll need to do to see your changes in-game is make sure your mod is enabled and reload. The back end for this has already seen some major progress, including the automatic retrieval of mod projects from the mod sources folder, capabilities for applying changes to things like build properties, and more. We will have some more progress and info on the TPack Builder 2.0 update in the next devlog, as we work more towards the goal of easy access modpack creation. Now, let's get to the moment you've all been waiting for, the results of the Questbook competition. As a quick refresher, for the entire month of October, we hosted a community Questbook contest, where the goal was to design a Questbook layout that we could use in the vanilla implementation of the upcoming QuestBooks mod. The QuestBooks mod will allow developers to implement a Questbook layout to guide new and veteran players throughout the game's content. There were some massive prizes in store for the winners, with the first place winner having their design integrated directly into the QuestBooks mod, and I'm happy to say that the submissions absolutely blew our expectations away. Originally, I had expected that there would only be a handful of really good submissions that would make candidates for winners and implementation in-game. However, we ended up struggling with deciding which submissions would not place in the top 8, as there were so many fantastic designs that all had their own unique flair. In fact, these submissions were so good that it didn't quite feel right to leave some out of placing the top placements and receiving payouts. So, we're adding some additional funds to the prize pool. The previous prizes had first place receiving $1,000 $1,000, second place receiving $500, and third place receiving $250, with 4th through 8th places receiving $50 each. In our new pricing, 1st through 3rd places will receive the same amount, but 4th through 8th places will now be receiving $80 each. Plus, we're introducing 3 honorable mentions placements that each will be receiving $50. This allows us to show extra appreciation for the great submissions that didn't quite top out the charts, and include some prizing for submissions that we felt were well thought out and hard worked on, but may not have quite aligned with exactly what we were looking for. So, without further ado, let's go over the winners and some of our reasoning for each placement. First are honorable mentions. These places go to the submissions from Tank Marco, Virid LX, and End the Lag. All of these submissions were great in their own right, but just weren't quite what we were looking for. For Tank Marco's, we really liked the content coverage, but the connections and progression throughout the content seemed to be a little cluttered and confusing to navigate. With some tweaks to the layout, this could have been a very strong entry. Virid LX's submission felt like a significant step in the right direction, but still felt mostly linear and disconnected. While the content coverage was very solid, having everything laid out without much connection between the points makes it feel more like a checklist than an interactive guide. For the last of our honorable mentions, End the Lag submission was incredibly well thought out and designed, but just isn't quite what we were looking for. This submission covers all but the most minute details of the game, containing nearly every single item and how to obtain it. While this is certainly unique and cool in its own right, this makes development of the Questbooks for larger mods essentially impossible, as many mods add lots of content, and creating trees for that content would be highly confusing, complex, and annoying to navigate, not to mention extraordinarily difficult to fill out. On top of this, even if it were just having this maximalist mindset for the vanilla implementation, the absurd scale of these trees would be a huge turnoff for new players, something we want to avoid by keeping them manageable. Now, let's get into our ranked top 8. In 8th place, we have Broly's submission. This submission feels almost maximalist in design philosophy, but the division of content into trees is so incredibly well thought out that everything still remains manageable, easily navigable, and concise. This submission is very nice, but is slightly more explicit with content like items than what we were looking for. In 7th, we have our first team submission from John Wolfram. This is the last maximalist design in our top placements, but is easily the best of all of them. The main tree is short and concise, with supporting trees for each biome that expand upon all the content the game has to offer. There's also an info page explaining the game's mechanics, which we are particularly fond of. The content organization here is expansive, but very well divided, allowing for the most effective deliverance of information without making things overwhelming. Unfortunately, for the reasons mentioned just before, we aren't looking for something super maximalist, but if we were, this submission would have very likely been the contest winner. In 6th place and onward, the decision making was very difficult. All of these submissions were incredibly strong contenders and would have made for perfectly fine implementations in-game. However, there can only be one winner, so let's talk about the rankings. The 6th place submission belongs to Endorser. Out of all the graphical designs for our submissions, this was the most clean by a wide margin. The style is very nice, and it's clear lots of thought was put into making sure that the tree structure was symmetrical and pleasing to look at. The biggest drawback of this tree is that some of the content feels a little disconnected. While the structure of the trees is very nice, there are a number of trees that only contain a couple quests, which can be a drawback in connectivity. Additionally, even some of the bigger trees have their size inflated by these challenge quests, which are cool, but don't actually contribute to guiding the player through the game. Once again, this submission is very good. It's just because there were so many good submissions that it didn't place any higher. In 5th place is this person. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. This submission was incredibly strong. The main tree is relatively open-ended, covering the core content of what makes up the essence of Terraria, while leaving the exploration and discovery of additional content up to the player. The biggest drawback of this submission is that it can be prone to the micro tree problem that was also present in Endorser's submission. However, out of every top submission so far, this one most closely aligns with our design philosophy and creates the experience for players that most resembles our ideal experience. Everything beyond and above this submission was simply a better execution of this ideal design philosophy. In 4th place, we have Yuki Haru's submission. This submission feels like a more refined version of the previous one, with every single quest being important and essential to the player's progression. The trees are minimalist, only covering that essence of Terraria, and leaving everything else open to interpretation by the player. The minimalism of this tree is well executed and a step in the right direction, but is just slightly too minimalist to cover all of the content we're looking to see covered. Now we get to the big 3. In 3rd place, we have Decrypt and Rolly G's submission. The organization of content here is incredibly well thought out, and the trees themselves are very pleasing to look at. The quests are engaging, and each one serves a purpose to guide the player towards progressing through the game. We don't really have many negative notes for the top 3 submissions, so instead, we'll be talking about why we believe the following submissions deserve to be ranked higher than the others. players. The decision between number 1 and number 2 was incredibly difficult. Both of these submissions are very strong in their own rights and actually feature very similar progression contents. However, only one can win, so a choice had to be made. In second place, we have the submission from Pringle. The content coverage here is fantastic, and it does so in a way that doesn't necessarily feel handholdy and still allows the players to discover content for themselves. Despite this, tons of content is covered, creating a fantastic blend between minimalist design and broad, deep coverage of what the game has to offer. The structure and organization of trees in the submission sets it just above number 3 and an incredibly strong contender for number 1. And now, we finally reached number 1. The competition among the top submissions was super close, and as I said before, anything 6th and up would have made for a perfectly fine in-game implementation. But we believe that the number 1 submission did everything just right, and there's literally nothing we could think of to change with it. And so, the number 1 submission is Blast. Where all of the top 3 submissions stood out above the rest, this submission stood out among the top 3. The interconnectivity between quests feels effortless and flows naturally. Where other trees feel more like spiderwebs that spiral outwards, this submission feels like a river that flows into branches and joins back into itself to create one cohesive, unified progression experience throughout the game. Don't mistake this for linearity, however. These branches go out in all different directions, interacting with each other and the mainline progression, meaning that every individual playthrough could take a different path and end up with a unique experience from everyone else. The content coverage is just right, reaching all of the content we'd like to make obvious to the player, while leaving out the content that is better found for the first time on its own. While the submission is a template that we will be using to build the in-game implementation, it isn't going to be a one-to-one recreation. We've seen various bits and pieces from all of the top submissions that we may have favored more than those corresponding bits from higher placing submissions. We look forward to implementing the in-game questbook in the coming weeks and potentially holding more community contests in the future. We will be reaching out to winners for payouts within the coming week. I want to give a huge thanks to our Patreon members for making this project possible, and as always, be sure to stay tuned for next month's devlog. Thanks for supporting the Bereft Souls.